Hi guys. My homeopathic review for today is Liz Lalor's Homeopathic Psychiatry. Interesting title, interesting book, and there's a couple interesting things about this which I find fascinating. By the way, it's Liz, get close up, Liz Lalor. This is by B. Jane, but it's like a sub brand or whatever they call that. It's called Archibald. I want to check that out. I think they have a program too, which I don't have. It's kind of expensive. And the book is really thick. I mean, you're looking at almost 2 inches here. It's kind of a juicy little monster here. It's about 900, almost like 850 pages. It covers a ton of remedies. I mean, some really unusual remedies in here that you don't hear most people talk about. I'm just going to kind of go through the table of contents here so you get a feel for it. This goes on and on. I think there might be over 200 remedies here. I could be wrong, but actually let me just do a little quick count here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. 35 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 350 cut by half, 170. So let's just say like 150 remedies plus, okay? What's interesting about this, it looks at cases and remedies from the delusion perspective. And just from my work, you can really pinpoint remedies on people based on physical symptoms, and they'll react to the remedy. But if you don't hit the case from a psychological perspective, a delusion perspective, or a sensation perspective, some kind of higher level phenomenon that's in the mind or in the emotions, you never get really great results. You get mediocre results. You get returning symptoms. You get so that the case, for example, one symptom will get better, but another one will get like increased. So you're really just kind of, you're not really changing anything. You're not really having this kind of subconscious shift. What you're having is just kind of just messing around with their problem. You're just kind of moving, getting rid of a problem in one area, moving into another area. And so that's kind of, it could be dangerous and it could be disturbing to the person to have that happen, especially, depending on the case, of course. Depending how sensitive they are and stuff like that. But the cool thing about this book, well, let's start off with a few of the things I don't like about this book. For example, I don't like the binding of this book. It's way too thick. It should be bigger. Like the size of this book should be bigger and thinner. Because what happens is the binding starts falling apart here. Look at that. So that's not really well done. And since this is like the Indian kind of style, like you can kind of see the binding falling apart. But it's annoying, but it's not like a killer, It's not like the book is not valuable. The price of this little baby, you know what? I gotta like look at these before these videos, but I'll check it out right now. Yeah. Let's see what it is. Okay, so it's about $50, and if you get it for minimum, you're looking at about $42. There's probably other people you can get it from, but it's about $42 book. It's worth it, but it's like the languaging in here. Well, let me kind of break it down a little bit different, and it could be useful for some people. It's not as useful for me for some reason. I don't really get a lot out of this book, but it's really interesting to look at some of these remedies that are just unusual and get a different take on it. But the way each remedy is set up, it's not like the usual kind of style. It's broken down into like these 5. Let's see if I can find this thing here. Okay, so yeah, it's broken down into the 5 kind of classifications in an area which kind of creates delusions, right? So it's denial, being forsaken, causation, depression, and resignation. So it's broken down like that. And like if you compare a book like this to like someone like I like Roger Morrison's style a lot, where she doesn't get into the dogmatic breaking things down. It's kind of like real kind of like, you know, it has to be in these 5 steps, you know, and to really understand something. It's a cool technique. It's interesting. And I'm always open for different people trying different models and methods. But personally, I don't get as much out of it. Okay? If you're like into psychiatry and psychology and you're used to that kind of languaging, this might be more useful to you. But that said, it's really cool to just kind of look at remedies from that perspective still. Like, for example, xanthoxylum. No one talks about xanthoxylum. 545, like the psychology of that remedy, you know, it's like never, you know. So, for example, denial. Let's just kind of go through this remedy. Xanthoxylum desert their own body, floating in air, and their own body deserts them. They would rather die than live. Xanthoxylum have numerous depression rubrics which perpetuate predictions of decline. Xanthoxylum literally feels like they fall to pieces and sink into their bed. The simulum will be only xanthoxylum if the patient fully embraces predictions of decline. Xanthoxylum want to die because they do not have enough mental and emotional energy to desire life. Xanthoxylum, the homeopathic remedy, is derived from prickly ash tree. If the fruit of the plant is rubbed on the skin, especially on the lips or in face, it has a numbing effect. The pulverized root and bark chewed has been used as a cure for toothache. The fruits are considered more active than the bark. They are also antispasmodic, carminative, and excellent for rheumatic pain. So, you know, it's helping the chi move around the body. Well, if you understand anything about chi, emotions, you know, deeply affect the way chi flows. So, like if you're having issues around, let's say, anger and repression of certain emotions, the liver chi is going to stagnate, or chi in the heart, or whatever, right? So that's, you know, if you understand Chinese medicine, it's interesting to kind of analyze something like that through that perspective. So it's a great chi tonic, is what this is saying. And I guess you could look up in a rubric anything that's antispasmodic, or I forget what carminative means. I think it's like a digestive thing, but I could be wrong. Antispasmodic and rheumatic pain. So rheumatic pain, it could be caused from different things, but again, you know, it's some kind of stuck energy, or some kind of energy in that area that maybe there's an infection. You know, there's different type of rheumatic pain, so that's a little bit trickier. But as with antispasmodic, kind of touches the chi idea. Okay, anyway, xanthoxylum as a homeopathic is commonly used for neuralgic pain, spinal disorders, nerve numbness, and headaches, especially associated with dysmenorrhea. So you have a strong connection with the sexual area of the woman's body, causing all sorts of problems in the spine, in headaches, dysmenorrhea. Boric notes that the remedy is for mental depression. Okay. And yeah, you could see that. I mean, if you're having, you know, hormonal issues, in this case, it's almost like we're focusing on it as a remedy for women, in this case. But if you look at it from a different perspective, it may be not just for women. Okay, xanthoxylum constitutionally carry with their psyche a numbing unresponsiveness to life. Xanthoxylum would rather sink into decline and die than make the choice to live. Okay, so it goes on and on. I might just, this is interesting, so I might just finish going through this and just give you the whole xanthoxylum remedy here. Xanthoxylum are the only remedy listed in 2 delusion rubrics. Floor was soft like walking on wool, and while walking, the ground is soft like wool. Yeah, it sounds like they're tripping out. But what does that mean? It sounds like they're like disassociating from the physical world, right? They feel like they're unable to make a mark in the world, like walking on wool. The similum will be only xanthoxylum if the patient displays evidence of extreme depressive weakness across all levels, emotional, mental, and physical. That's another thing I like about her style. It's like she interprets the remedy, and she has these like rubrics and things like that she brings from other sources. So that's pretty cool. Denial. So this is the first one. Denial. Delusion rubric. Floating air in. So that'd be floating in air. Dissociative disorder. That's the rubric that they find it in. And then when sitting, floating, when, it says floating air in sitting when. So it'd be like, I don't know, like basically feeling of, sitting, when sitting in air floating. When sitting, okay, when sitting floating on air probably, okay? So there's this kind of feeling of not being grounded. So on forsaken it says none. Causation it says none. Depression goes into it here. Delusion rubric. Bewildered, he is. He is bewildered. Delusion. One would rather die than live. Delusion. Sinking in bed. She is sinking in bed, down deep in bed. Okay. Is going into decline. Another rubric. Another delusion. Again, decline, which is interesting too, because it's kind of like going down. There's this kind of element of down and up, right? I don't know what that means, but walking, wool. I'm walking on wool. Floor was soft like wool, okay. Falling forward. The remedy should not be interpreted literally. It pertains to predictions of failure. Okay. We'll go with that. So the fifth area is resignation. So they've given up. See, it's like when you give up on an area, it's like it's settled in. It's a part of you now. It's a part of your identity. It's a part of your makeup. And some things you do settle for. You do like resign and accept it. There's some conditions that we just can't change, you know. But there might be a way of compensating for it or dealing with it in a mature, realistic way. Like humans, we can't fly, but we could fly on a glider or, you know, whatever, hot air balloon, a plane. So there's kind of like, you have a problem, you accept it, and you move on. But what happens is sometimes you get these problems, and they're, it's like you get into a car accident, and then for the rest of your life, I can't get inside a car because it's, you know, you've just given up that whole area. You know, you've resigned. And it's like, wait a second, maybe you don't want to get into a car. I don't like driving, okay? But to just never get into a car because of the fear, that's a different kind of level, right? Okay, so delusion rubric. Die, about to die, one was die rather than die than live, one would, okay. So dying, he is dying, his head is divided, body's falling apart into pieces, lighter than air, the body is enlarged. Okay, delusions, being sick, and has a bunch of remedies here. Okay, and self-deluding. The exaggerated belief that one is sick can be maintained and nurtured for varying reasons. The homeopath, looking at a case analysis, has to be able to understand why it is advantageous for the patient to maintain that belief that they will always be sick. One reason that the psychological delusional stance is maintained by the patient is that they lack the delusion of grandeur in the psyche, which would enable them to avoid anxiety and hypochondria. Secondly, if there are inconsistencies between stage 1 and stage 5, then there will always be evidence of internal discord, which will either accelerate the present pathology, hypochondria, or precede future obsessive health anxieties. So, you know, that was interesting. I like to work with that remedy a little bit more now. Kind of gives me a different take. Maybe I'll read like more of a physical poisoning element of it and kind of see what it's doing to the physical body a little bit more. Maybe some of the emotions a little bit more. But hey, anyway, so for $42, think it's an interesting book. I'm glad I got it. I wish I could get more out of it, but I think if you're into certain fields, you'll get more out of this book. And that's about it. I mean, I'm just going to kind of, before I get off here, I'm going to just kind of shoot some other unusual remedies. I always like looking for unusual remedies because everyone knows about Nate Muir, everyone knows about lachesis, everyone knows about this and that. You know, but not too many people know about ozone, or crocus, or podifolium, or, by the way, I think Massimo has a great book on that one. I mean, a great, write-up on that. Cistus canadensis, dioxin. Who talks about dioxin? So it's pretty cool that she has a lot of these kind of unusual little remedies. Positronium, cyclamen, Rajania. I didn't even seen that remedy before. I might have, but so that's pretty cool. So just on that ground, you got a cool little Santos helper here.